in as they're coming in. So first, I want to welcome you to this beautiful Saturday. Wow, I'm already ready for the weekend. For this beautiful Wednesday morning. My name is Joanne Horsline. I am the Vice President here at the JTHS Miami office, located in Jupiter, Palm Beach County. Like to let everyone know that this class is being recorded, so our members will be able to actually view it on MiamiRealtorsLive.com. It should be up there by the end of the week. Please keep yourself muted throughout this until we get to the questions and at the end. I would like to introduce Phyllis Choi. She is the Vice Chair of the Commissioners for Palm Beach County Housing Authority. She is also a current JTHS Miami Board of Governor and a two-time past president for JTHS Association of Realtors. So welcome, Phyllis.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming and joining us as we navigate through the public housing arena. We want to use this time to help educate everyone on the process of what public housing is and how it impacts society as a whole. As we navigate this journey, please be mindful that anyone can become a victim of the need for a step up. If nothing else has proven how urgent public housing is, then all you need to do is watch the news to see what this pandemic has done to so many folks in the country. So the story begins. The Housing Act of 1937 is responsible for the birth of federal housing as we know it today. Throughout the years, this governing body has made numerous changes to policy and guidelines. As a commissioner for the Palm Beach County Housing Authority, and I was appointed by the former Governor Scott, my duties are held to the highest standards under the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It is the role of a commissioner to lead the agency toward providing families a place to live, to grow, and to work toward self-sufficiency. Commissioners provide leadership, set policy, approve budget, and earn the support in the community for housing programs. The role of the commissioner is that of a policymaker, while the responsibility of the administration belongs to the paid professional working as the executive director. Back in December of 2018, the Board of Commissioners had a meeting to fill an empty position of the executive director at the Palm Beach County Housing Authority. While the task was somewhat challenging with a pool of candidates from across the country, I can unequivocally say the best person was selected for our agency. Our speaker today is going to be Carol Jones Gilbert, again appointed as our executive director back in December of 2018. Prior to joining the Palm Beach County Housing Authority, Carol spent 12 years with the Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority, working her way from property manager to chief executive officer. During her extensive career in the housing industry, Carol also held positions with the Dallas Housing Authority, Franciscan Ministries, along with various positions in education, homeless, disability, and senior service organizations. She has a wealth of knowledge regarding HUD programs and proven experience in identifying and assessing needs, working effectively, economically, and compassionately, and helping housing authorities achieve their missions and goals. Carol is a proud graduate of Texas A&M University with a BA in speech administration. Okay, whose blood runs deep? Maroon? All right. She's the mother of one son and recently joined the Grandparents Club in December after the birth of her granddaughter. In her leisure time, if there's any, Carol likes to read, bake, and of course, spoiling that little granddaughter. As we move forward, Ms. Carroll's going to navigate programs that impact many, such as the homeless, our veterans, aged out teenagers, Section 8, and of course, various ways a client may qualify towards getting self-sufficiency within the programs itself. The goal at the end of the day is to provide choice, inclusive communities which allow housing to be a platform for social and economic development. And at this time, I'm going to turn our presentation over to Ms. Carol Jones Gilbert.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Choi, for that introduction. I am so honored to be able to present to you this morning. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me well, see the screen, and just know that there will be time at the end of the presentation for any questions. So jot down any questions you may have as I proceed through the presentation. Okay, next slide. So here's the agenda. Basically, I want to give a PBCHA, Palm Beach County Housing Authority overview, a little bit about what we do. I want to talk in detail about the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is our largest program and where we assist the largest number of families. I want to talk about the pros and cons of Section 8 for landlords, because I think there's a lot that gets discussed about the pros and cons. I want to talk, as Commissioner Choi mentioned, about self-sufficiency, provide a CARES update, and of course, leave time for questions. So as Commissioner Choi mentioned, we were established, public housing was established by the Housing Act of 1937, but we were established, the Palm Beach County Housing Authority was established under Chapter 421 of the Florida statute in 1968. And we were formed as a special district of the state of Florida. As we are governed by a 5-member board of commissioners that are appointed by the governor, because we're a county housing authority. So our commissioners have to be appointed by the governor. And our board must include a resident board member, someone who is receiving services from either our public housing or our Housing Choice Voucher Program. The Palm Beach County Housing Authority has jurisdiction throughout all of Palm Beach County. So as you know, that's 39 municipalities that we have jurisdiction, and we provide affordable housing through various rental assistance programs. Our total annual budget is about $39.1 million. We have 44 employees who I'm eternally grateful for the hard work and commitment that they put into our residents. I would be remiss if I did not mention my #1 supporter, who is my mom, who is on this presentation. She keeps me supported and encouraged and covered. And so she is unofficially a member of the PBCHA team. PBCHA's funds come from 5 main sources. We get Housing Choice Voucher assistance payments and administrative fees. That's about 30 million of that $39 million. We also get public housing operating funds. We get public housing capital funds, which is about $1.1 million every year. We get rent from public housing residents, which is about $1.4 million. And we get funds from other local programs. We get state money, and we have other instrumentalities which cover our project-based voucher sites where we get cash flow or development fees. So these are our housing programs. We have 2,650 Housing Choice Voucher tenant-based vouchers. And tenant-based vouchers are those that move with the tenant. We have what's called portability. So once a resident or a person receives a tenant-based voucher, that voucher can move with them or port wherever they want to go in the United States. So they can take the voucher after a year of residency and move to Georgia, move to the Virgin Islands, move to Puerto Rico, because it's a tenant-based voucher and it goes with the tenant. We also have 428 public housing units, and that is a separate program from Section 8 where we are the landlord of approximately 428 units. We have 420 project-based vouchers, and that's included in that 2,650 vouchers. Our project-based vouchers are different from the tenant-based vouchers in that the subsidy is tied to the unit. The tenant has the assistance as long as they live in the subsidized unit. If they move out of the unit, they no longer have the assistance. It doesn't go with them like the tenant-based voucher. We have 240 housing opportunity for persons with AIDS vouchers that we administer for the city of West Palm Beach. Those are vouchers that are specifically provided to persons with AIDS. And they're just like a tenant-based voucher that goes with the person when they move and they can locate their own housing. We have 265 mainstream vouchers. Mainstream vouchers are vouchers that are provided to families that have someone that is between the ages of 18 and 61 who is non-elderly and disabled. So if there's anyone in the family that is disabled and non-elderly, they're eligible for a mainstream voucher. We have 148 non-subsidized units in our Banyan property. These are units where it's rent controlled. It's kind of a workforce community where the rent is set and it's based on income. We have 20 foster youth to independence vouchers, and these are vouchers for children that are aging out of foster care. So they're between 18 and 24. It assists them for 36 months, and they receive supportive services as a component of receiving these vouchers. And we were the first public housing authority in the state of Florida to receive foster youth to independence vouchers. We have 15 VASH vouchers. This is a new award for us this year, and that's the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing vouchers. And these are vouchers that are specifically set to serve veterans, and we receive referrals from the VA hospital for veterans in need of this voucher assistance. And then we have 6 neighborhood stabilization program homes that we also are kind of rent controlled, and we operate those and serve as the landlord of those. So we assist a large number of families. You can see in a multitude of ways, we are a major provider of rental assistance in the Palm Beach County area. Next slide. So our public housing program consists of these sites. We have Dyson Circle, which is 134 units. We have Drexel, which is our senior community, and it's 100 units. We have Shaw and Seminole, which each are family sites and have 75 units each. And then we have single family homes. We actually have 44 single family homes that are operated as public housing. And then, as I mentioned, our non-subsidized site, which is Banyan Club Apartments, which has 148 units. And those are hard cash units that we serve as the landlord for, as the Palm Beach County Housing Authority. Next slide. So how does Housing Choice Voucher Program work? I'm sure most of you are aware of what the Section 8, it was formerly called Section 8, but it's now called the Housing Choice Voucher. And the reason why that's important is because that keyword is choice. It gives families the ability to find suitable housing unit of their choice where an owner agrees to rent under the program. The Housing Choice Voucher Program is a three-way partnership. It's a partnership between landlords, the housing authority, and the tenant. And it takes all 3 parts of that partnership for the program to work. Basically, we pay a housing subsidy to landlords directly on behalf of the participating family, and the family pays their portion. The difference between the actual rent that's charged by the landlord and the amount that's subsidized by us. Next slide. So in Palm Beach, we are what's called a mandated small area fair market rent housing authority. And so what this means is our payment standard, which is the maximum amount for rent and utilities that we will pay, is set by zip code. And it's based on the fair market rents for that particular zip code. And so what that means is that we have 73 zip codes in Palm Beach County. So we have 73 payment standards. And the payment standards range anywhere from $580, which is the minimum amount that we will pay for a 1-bedroom, all the way up to $5,445, which is the maximum amount that we will pay for a 5-bedroom. Basically, every month we pay $2.9 million in housing assistance payments. And that's what we have to do every month to pay the landlords that participate in our programs. When a unit is selected by the family, it has to pass 3 tests. It has to be affordable for the family. No family can pay more than 40% of their income for any unit that's rented under the program. We initially want them to pay 30%, but the maximum is 40% of their income. So it has to be affordable for the family. The rent has to be reasonable. The rent that is being requested by the landlord cannot be more than unassisted units with the same amenities and features in the zip code that's being proposed. So the rent has to be reasonable. Just because a landlord believes that their property is worth a certain amount of rent doesn't mean that that's the amount that we can pay. We have to look at the payment standard. And even though the payment standard may say that it's $5,445, if the amenities and features of the unit are not reasonable compared to other units, then we will determine that what is a reasonable amount of rent for that particular unit. And then it has to pass housing quality standards. And that is the initial inspection where we make sure that it meets the minimum basic standards. And that is where we pay inspectors to go out, inspect the unit to make sure it is safe, decent, and affordable. And no housing assistance can be provided until we have a past HQS inspection for each and every unit that is operated under the program. Next slide. So what are some of the pros and cons for landlords? So basically, there's a lot of pros. You have a consistent guaranteed income. Even through a government shutdown or shortfall, we continue to pay the housing assistance payment for the clients that we provide rental assistance for. And you're going to get that every month. You have partially pre-screened tenants because the housing authority has a screening criteria. We do background checks, we do credit checks, but more importantly, we do background checks. There are mandated offenses that we have to screen out for. If you're a registered sex offender or if you've been convicted of producing meth on an assisted property, those are mandated denials. But we all have other denials that we have in place, so we screen the people that come into the program. You have a constant tenant base. I can tell you that here, the demand for housing for Section 8 far exceeds the supply. With COVID, that has just intensified. We received 50 mainstream vouchers in 2019, and we opened our wait list for those 50 vouchers. We received 9,000 applications. So the need is always greater than the supply. And that is across the country. We talk about the need for affordable housing. You will have lower vacancy rates because tenants don't tend to move a lot when they get a voucher. You tend to have less turnover, they stay longer, and the tenants are motivated to pay their portion of the rent, because failure to pay their portion of the rent means they lose the voucher. And with the tremendous demand for a voucher, people are not wanting to lose their voucher because there's extreme difficulty in getting the voucher back. The Palm Beach County Housing Authority has not opened their wait list for the Section 8 tenant-based vouchers since 2011. And we just issued some of those people vouchers that were on the list in 2018 who had applied in 2011. So there can be extensive wait times. And so it's important to families to maintain the voucher once they move into once they receive one. You also get free advertising. We have what's called Go Section 8. And any landlord who wants to participate in the Housing Choice Voucher can list their property on this website free of charge. And many voucher recipients are looking on Go Section 8 and even on our agency website for information around landlords who will rent to persons with a Section 8 voucher. And you will have fewer evictions because you have fewer delinquency. The rent for that the recipient pays is based on their income. So we know it's affordable for them, and the agency is making up the difference. And so basically you won't have a lot of delinquency because they're going to pay their portion and we're going to pay the portion that we have. Now, so what are some of the cons of being a Section 8 landlord? Yearly inspections. This has been changed lately with some flexibility that HUD has given. For good landlords who have had a record of having safe, decent, quality housing, we can do a biannual inspection. So we could only inspect it every 2 years. With the COVID, we've been allowed to do self-certification, where some landlords can self-certify to corrections or repairs, and we can accept that versus having to go out and do an actual second inspection. But on any case, we typically will do a yearly inspection of the unit. And I'm not so sure that this is a con, because that protects both the landlord and the recipient, because yearly we're going to come in and make sure that it meets the basic minimum standards. As I talked about, there are rental pricing caps. We are bound by the fair market rents that we have set the payment standards at. And so that basically determines how much for rent and utilities we can pay for a unit in a particular zip code. So we often run into times where a landlord may have made a substantial investment in upgrading their unit, but we're capped at how much we can pay by the fair market rents for a unit in that zip code. And so that can run into an issue sometimes. There will be delays in receiving the first month's rent check. And that's because there is a lot of administrative paperwork that we have to do as a housing authority to ensure that each unit is leased up and we have all the documentation. We have to have a signed housing assistance payment contract. We have to have a signed lease. We have to have a signed tenancy addendum. The inspection has to take place. But typically, if you can wait up to no more than 60 days, you're going to get your payment consistently from after that first month payment. The potential for challenging tenants. We are serving those who are some of the most vulnerable in our society. But I would say I would challenge this as well, because challenging tenants exist in all income levels. So sometimes we work with the housing authority, with it being a partnership, we work with the landlord to mitigate any challenging issues that they may face. The families have what's called the family obligations. And under the Housing Choice Voucher Program, these obligations are things that they have to comply with in order to maintain their place and their participation in the program. And we explain that to them in a briefing orientation before they're issued the voucher and at each recertification, which we do annually. So we're constantly reminding them of the family obligations and the landlord obligations. HUD does not pay security deposits. And this has been a big issue, one that surprised me in Palm Beach County. I was astounded by, when I was looking, when I first moved here, of the request for first, last, and damage deposits. It's very hard for low-income families to come up with 3 months of security deposit. And so what we try to do as the housing authority is work with the landlords, because as part of the housing assistance payments contract, we're going to pay the first and last month rent. Even if a family moves out in the middle of the month, the landlord is entitled to the entire month's rent. So the first and last will be paid. So sometimes we try to provide incentives to landlords to say, can we let them get in for just a damage deposit and make it easier for the families to be able to lease the unit. And then there are property damage issues. Sometimes there are cases where there is property damage, but landlords have to treat Section 8 residents just as they would any other tenant. If there are issues, I encourage residents to frequently check your apartment, frequently be in contact with the participant, and frequently, ensure that they're maintaining your property to the standards that you have set in your lease. If damage is done, the housing authority does not pay for damage. A landlord would have to take that tenant to court and sue for damages just as they would with a non-assisted tenant. But one of the main pros of Section 8 that I left out is that you get to help families who are in need. And that is one of the basic components of the Housing Choice Voucher Program, is you open up housing to a potentially whole new market of people who are served and have needs and are vulnerable. And you get the joy of being able to assist those families in finding decent, safe, sanitary housing. So those are just some of the pros and cons. Next slide. So what do we do with our clients? I am a big proponent that we are not here just to provide bricks and mortar. It would be, to me, a failure of the agency if we did not improve the quality of life of our residents during the time that they are with the Palm Beach County Housing Authority. And some of the key things that we work to do is to move families to self-sufficiency. We serve two broad populations: people who are in a position to markedly increase their self-sufficiency and people who will need long-term support. We have participants that will never be able to live independently and without some type of rental assistance. They're going to need, we have frail elderly, we have people with severe disabilities, but we also have those who are able to increase their self-sufficiency, but with a little assistance of life skills training, wealth creation, asset building opportunities, job training, and career services. And HUD has several programs that they help housing authorities to administer to promote self-sufficiency. They have the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. We have an Earned Income Disregard. We have a Jobs Plus Pilot Program and a Resident Opportunity and Self-Sufficiency Program. And these are just some of the programs that help to move residents to self-sufficiency. So next slide. So what does self-sufficiency look like? Self-sufficiency means that they're independent of any type of benefit assistance. Under the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, and this is a program that is eligible to public housing and housing choice voucher residents, we enter people into a contractor participation where they set goals for a 5-year and up to 7-year period. As their earned income increases, that increase is put into an escrow savings account, which is paid to the participant upon graduation. I can say that one of the most outstanding things that I did when I first took over leadership here at the Palm Beach County Housing Authority is we had a young lady who entered our housing choice voucher program. She had 0 income, but over the terms of her contract of participation, she was able to steadily increase her income through wages. And she graduated and received a check of her escrow savings of $37,000. She used that $37,000 to purchase a home in Port St. Lucie. She closed on her house, and she is no longer a participant of our program. She used the program just as it was intended, to move from self-sufficiency. We also have the earned income disallowance. Sometimes one of the things that prevents people from getting employment or seeking higher employment is that your rent is based on your income. So as your income goes up, your rent goes up. And so a lot of times with the increase in their income, families will lose key benefits that they cannot afford to replace through the increase in income. But what we have is what's called an earned income disallowance or disregard. And what this does is, as a family increases their earned income, it's a one-time benefit to families in the public housing program. As their earned income increases for 24 months, for the first 12 months, we disregard 100% of their earned income increase. Over the next 12 months, we disregard 50% of their earned income increase. So that allows families to gradually increase their income without having a significant hit at the onset. The Jobs Plus Pilot Program is similar to the FSS program, and this is a program, the Jobs Plus Pilot and the Ross program are programs that the Palm Beach County Housing Authority has applied for. We're awaiting notification of if we've been awarded these programs. The Job Plus Pilot Program, this program helps residents of public housing increase their earnings through on-site employment-related services, financial incentives. There's a Jobs Plus EID, similar to the EID with the earned income disallowance. But under the Jobs Plus program, their earned income increase is disregarded for the entire time that the Jobs Plus Pilot program is in effect. It doesn't have a 24-month cap like the earned income disallowance. The Ross program is another program where it provides grant and money for us to hire coordinators to work with residents one-on-one to link them to empowerment activities to become economically self-sufficient. And so there's all these programs where we're working with those to improve the quality of life. Under the Ross program, we're not just working with those who are able to work, but we're also working with the frail and elderly and disabled to see what are the referrals we need to make to help them improve their quality of life as well. And so there's all these programs that we work with our participants to try to help those that can move to self-sufficiency. And I can tell you, we just implemented our resident services department. We have 2 FSS coordinators and a resident services director, and we're constantly making partnerships for in-kind services to assist our residents in improving their quality of life and gaining a better quality of life for them and their children. Next slide. So the CARES funding. As you all know, there's been a lot of funding that has come out under the CARES Act. The first CARES Act was signed March 27th, and it was $2 trillion. And 1.25 billion of that went to the Housing Choice Voucher Program. 850 million went to admin fees, and that was to housing authorities so that they could administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program, continue to provide services, and serve these families even in the midst of the pandemic. I can tell you, my staff and I have been at work since June. We've been back in the office, continuing to serve our families because we know that our families have been disproportionately impacted by the COVID. Many of them have lost their jobs or had significant decreases in income. And so 380 million of that, and then a second allotment of 470 million was to help housing authorities pay higher rental assistance on behalf of these families. And we have seen our per unit costs go up for our Housing Choice Voucher recipients because they have had decreases in income. And so that has been the funding that we've used to make sure that we can continue to serve our families. Under the CARES Act, we also received 685 million was provided to housing authorities across the country for the operation of public housing units and to make sure that we can continue to provide services to our public housing residents. In the second stimulus package, 25 billion of that went to emergency rental assistance. And I am proud to say that the Palm Beach County Housing Authority partnered with Palm Beach County to actually process emergency rental and utility assistance applications. We processed 550 applications to help people get rental assistance, and they could get up to 3 months of rental assistance and up to $1,200, I believe it's $1,200 of utility assistance. And we just learned that an additional 45 million, there was 20 million that was made available under the first allotment for rental and utility assistance and 20 million for mortgage assistance. We just learned that an additional 45 million is going to be administered, and they will again begin taking applications. And these are for families that can demonstrate that they've had a COVID impact. And so we have worked very diligently with the county to administer these emergency rental and utility assistance applications. Part of what was also done were the eviction moratoriums. With the CARES Act, the HUD eviction moratorium went into effect March 27th through July 25th. And basically this said for any public housing or housing choice voucher resident, they could not be evicted for non-payment of rent while the moratorium was in place. And this was for any housing recipient, that whether they had a COVID impact or not. Now, it didn't relieve them of the obligation to pay the rent. It just said that they could not be evicted for non-payment of rent. But one of the things that was helpful for our residents in public housing and housing choice voucher, as I stated before, their rent is based on their income. So if their income goes down, their rent goes down. And so we encouraged our families to report decreases in income, and there were all kinds of flexibilities in the administrative process that allowed us to quickly process those changes for families that had been negatively impacted. The CDC implemented a eviction moratorium as of September 4th, and it was originally through December 31st. That moratorium, people have to actually declare that they have had a COVID impact, and they have to understand under penalty of perjury that there are sanctions that can be applied. But there are also considerable sanctions that can be applied to landlords who evict families who are covered by this CDC moratorium. And it is really tremendous financial sanctions. This moratorium has been extended through January 31st initially, and we just learned it's been extended through March 31st. In dealing with our recipients, the one we encourage them to report any decreases in income so that we can adjust their rent. But we also remind them that they're obligated to pay that rent. And once the moratorium ends, they're going to be responsible for any portion of the rent that has accrued during this time. And so those are some of the things that have happened under the CARES Act We continue to partner with our residents, to partner with agencies to ensure that our families are not displaced and that they don't find themselves, out during this pandemic. And as I stated, it is only for non-payment of rent. Any other violations of the lease are not covered under the moratorium. So that also is encouraging families to continue to honor the other obligations under their family obligations and their lease so that they can remain housed. So the current initiatives for the Palm Beach County Housing Authority is we want to assist as many families as possible. Our goal is to provide rental assistance to as many households to keep people housed. We are in the business of housing people. And so we're always applying for additional opportunities to serve residents. In just the last year, we increased our mainstream vouchers by 140 vouchers so that we could assist more families. So as opportunities become available, we're always applying to make sure that we can serve additional families because, as I said before, the need is tremendous. We want to expand our housing supply. We're also looking at how do we develop more affordable housing? How do we expand? How do we acquire properties? And that's where realtors come into play. If there's land, if there's apartment complexes that are losing their affordability, we're always looking for how do we expand and develop long-term affordable housing options through grants, through things that come out, or through the acquisition of other properties or land to develop additional units. We're trying to streamline and improve our operations so that we can have more effective service delivery. COVID has presented challenges for housing authorities, just as it has for other entities and businesses. We're having to reimagine how we do things. We've had to do a lot remotely, and inspections was one of the things. How do you do an inspection in the middle of a pandemic? So we had to work with residents. We had to work with how do we do work orders? How do we make sure that our units stay safe but protect our staff? And I'm proud to say that we have had very limited positive exposure to COVID among our staff, even though we've continued to serve our residents and continue to go in the units and make repairs and make sure that our units have been safe. We worked very hard to provide additional masks to our clients. We worked with the health department and received 24,000 masks that we distributed to our housing choice voucher and public housing residents. We're giving them information. So we're doing things in the midst of this COVID to make sure that our families are protected and taken care of. We offered COVID testing at 2 of our sites, at our Drexel Senior site and at Dyson. And we're working with the health department and other agencies to provide vaccinations at our Drexel Senior site, because we know that low income and minority families are not being, rushing to get the vaccine. So we're trying to make it easy for our residents to be served and to receive the vaccine. We also are making sure we leverage partnerships with landlords, local, state, and federal governments, agencies, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, and private businesses so that we maximize our impact. We are an agency that is on the move and that is in transition. I have pushed the staff very hard in the 2 years that I've been here, and we've increased the number of people that we serve by more than 400 families. But that is our job, is to be here for those who are in need and make sure that we provide housing, a basic component that everyone needs to be successful. And so we're trying to make sure that we are positively impacting our residents and the communities that we serve. Next slide. And so that is the complete presentation. I know that I gave you a really quick, I did not go into every single detail related to the programs, but I wanted to allow time for question and answers because I'm sure there'll be questions, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't overwhelm you with information. Are there any questions?
Carol, I had a question that had come up in the chat.
Okay.
Do we have an average of how long tenants stay?
It's generally longer for our housing choice voucher program than the public housing program. But on average, our residents stay anywhere from 5 to 10 years. And like I said, because they have to pay the security deposit, a lot of families don't move a lot because it's hard to come up with those security deposits if they're happy where they're leasing, they tend to stay in place.
All right, and one other question. Someone said it's awesome. I'd love to contribute and and help. Where can I?
How realtors can help us, like I said, our families are looking for safe, decent, affordable housing, encouraging landlords to participate in the program. We can't do this program without landlords. There has to be a supply of units that we can refer people to. And so making sure those linkages that people understand, working with the housing authority to address any issues that come up, because it is a three-way partnership. I have been in housing for over 20 years, and I can tell you, I have met families who are just dedicated to their families and wanting to make the best for their families, just like everyone else. And so I think it is critical that we continue to provide these services, that we continue to meet a need and to work with these families to help them, like I said, move to self-sufficiency and improve their quality of life.
Another question, do all housing authorities work similarly? For instance, the Miami-Dade Housing Authority?
For the most part, yes. You have some housing authorities that are moved to work agencies. They are ones where they have a little more flexibility in their funding and how they use their funding, and they can set different leasing criteria. But for the most part, most housing authorities work exactly the same. We all have the same regulations, guidelines that we have to abide by.
How long does it take to get a property approved?
It doesn't take long at all. Basically, all they have to do is when a resident finds a location that they want to lease, if the landlord is not on their program, our program, then we get their information, we get their tax ID number, we get their ACH deposit, but there's a packet that we give to the residents when they find a unit. We tell them if you're having difficulty or the landlord doesn't understand, refer them to the housing authority and we'll talk them through any questions they have about the program. But once they find that unit, if it passes HQS inspection, then the unit is approved. And the choice is up to the resident. We don't steer anyone toward a certain community. We don't tell them only go here. It is truly the voucher recipient's choice as to where they choose to use their voucher.
All right, is there, regarding info, unit mix, is there need to meet a demand, like a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3 bedrooms, that type of thing? Is there any specific that you're more in need of than the other?
Yes, 1 and 2 bedrooms have a high demand. We're not seeing families that need the larger size units as much as we used to. So there's not a lot of demand for 3, 4, and 5 bedroom units, but definitely 1 bedrooms, especially because of the homeless issue here in Florida. You have a lot of single adults who are homeless, and so 1 bedrooms are in high demand.
Where can realtors see a list of available housing?
For the Housing Choice Voucher Program?
I believe so.
As I mentioned, Go Section 8 is where we encourage landlords to list properties that they have available. We encourage our voucher recipients to look in the paper, to use the regular tools that people use, Zillow and Trulia, because we tell them if the landlord is not on the program, we can work with them to get on the program, and that's not difficult. We're always looking to increase the number of landlords who participate in the program.
How can we get more education for realtors on how to go through the program works for applicants? So how can the realtors learn more about it to help?
There's plenty of information on HUD.gov. In the near future, we're going to be doing like a landlord orientation, similar to the briefing orientation we do for voucher recipients, that explains intricately how you walk through and work through the process. So I would encourage them to go to HUD.gov and research the program, to talk with their local housing authorities. In Palm Beach County, there are 6 housing authorities. There's the Boca Housing Authority, Delray, Pahokee, West Palm Beach County Housing Authority, and Riviera Beach. So there's several housing authorities in this area. Palm Beach County Housing Authority has jurisdiction throughout the county, where the other ones are restricted to that area that housing authority serves.
All right, we go back up.
Okay.
Reference highlight the zip code requirements. Are there different requirements per zip code?
It's just that the payment standard is set by zip code, and that's because we're a small area fair market rent. And they did that. There's about 26, 29 mandated housing authorities that have to offer payment standards by zip code. And that's because the rental market is so high in those communities that they said that they would set it by zip code so that it would allow more choice. In a lot of housing authorities, there's just one payment standard that applies for every single unit throughout their jurisdiction. Ours is different in that we have to apply it by the zip code, and that once again determines the maximum amount of rent and utilities we will pay for a unit in that particular zip code. As you can imagine, it's higher in certain areas than it is in other areas, and that's based on what units that are not assisted are going for in that zip code.
All right, another comment on here. I found it to be a big problem trying to help my clients. I receive more no's than anything. What has changed with the program which will encourage more landlords to rent the property to choice voucher tenants? Feedback generally they have is that tenants don't take care of the property during tenancy.
And that's why I said it can be challenging. I encourage landlords to routinely inspect your unit. You know, one of the things we found is, people are not inspecting regularly. We're going to inspect it once a year, but I wouldn't wait for that once a year inspection. We're always communicating to screen your tenants. In some housing authorities, they do home visits before they let someone move in. And I used to do that in Denver, go and visit them in their current unit to see if they were being a good tenant where they were at. So there's all kinds of things that we can work with the landlord to ensure that the tenant is keeping their end of the bargain. And I have found that on average, like I said, we're assisting nearly 3,000 families through our program. On average, we have more that are maintaining the unit than are not maintaining the unit.
All right, if a voucher in a specific zip code is for 3,500 and the rental unit is 3,700, can the tenant pay the difference or would that be against the rules?
The tenant can pay the difference as long as it's not more than 40% of their income. But once a HAP contract is signed, there is no, you are not allowed to have any side payments. So if we say that this is the amount of the rent is 3,500, you cannot say, okay, the housing authorities agreed to 3,500, but you can pay me an additional 200 on the side. Because we want to make sure that that unit is affordable for the tenant. And so we are mandated that they cannot pay, the maximum they can pay is 40% of their income.
A lot of associations, I believe they're referring to like homeowners and condos, don't allow tenants with vouchers, but the landlord does. Is it in the future to work with associations?
There are associations that we work with right now, but one of the things of that we try to approach is not discriminating on participants on the source of the income. We've had people say, I've had sometimes people tell me, well, I'll be a landlord in the program, but can I charge more for the voucher person that I would charge for a person that doesn't receive a voucher? And no, you can't. We shouldn't be charging more for an assisted unit than you would for an unassisted unit. We have worked with HOAs and we have worked with some, but we believe that that's discrimination if you're discriminating on them just for this main reason, just because the rent is being paid with a voucher.
Are landlords allowed legally to exclude Section 8 voucher tenants?
That's a tough one. Legally, I don't think so. It hasn't been done, yes. There are communities where you can say if it's, if the payment standard is not what landlords don't have to go down to what the payment standard is set in that zip code. So that would be one way to legally exclude them, is if you set the rent above the payment standard. But I would encourage landlords not to legally exclude them. Their families, we want them to have choice. We want them to be able to live in areas of opportunity. and not be confined to just any given area. One of the things that kind of limits choice for a lot of residents is sometimes there's lack of public transportation or access to jobs that would limit them and confine them to certain areas. But we really encourage residents to have choice and to move to areas of opportunity. So I wouldn't want them to legally discriminate. And I would hope that they wouldn't. And I do know that there are some fair housing rules that would prevent them from legally discriminating on protected classes. But unfortunately, income is not a protected class.
All right, so then another one is HOA, the Homeowners Association denial of fair housing discrimination.
I would have to say it would depend on what the HOA's denial was based around. Like I said, there are 7 protected classes. And so if the denial was on one of those protected classes, yes, it would be fair housing discrimination.
Is there an age restriction for public housing and or housing choice vouchers?
No. They have to be 18 or an emancipated minor, but there is no age restriction unless it is a property that is designated just for seniors, like our Drexel property. And some senior properties, the age requirement could be 50, 55, near elderly, or 62 and older. And that's the only age discrimination, but seniors are able to live in family properties. They're not just restricted to senior properties. There is no age restriction.
All right, another question. My daughter is a GCC developer. Would love to share this info for affordable housing to build where need it available. Where should I refer her to start looking for appropriate information for developments or construction affordable housing units? I personally like to see more affordable housing available to assist those in need.
I know we work very closely with the county on the penny sales tax. There's been uses that have been put towards using that to develop more affordable housing. There's all types of state and government dollars that encourage affordable housing. There's Section 202 grants that are coming out. So I was encouraged to work very closely with your county and state, because they have dollars that they can put toward affordable housing. Tax credits are another avenue for building affordable housing. And so there's 9% and 4% tax credits. There's all kinds of things that are available at the state and local level and through your housing authorities. Housing authorities frequently partner with developers. They co-develop affordable housing. And so we just put out a solicitation for development consultants. And then as we get past and move to certain projects, we will put out solicitations for co-developer partners, people who are willing to partner with the housing authority to create affordable housing.
All right. Are there any other questions that anyone want to take themselves off mute and ask? All right, Phyllis, did you have anything to add?
Thank you very much, Joanne. On behalf of Carol and the Palm Beach County Housing Authority, we hope today's presentation provided you with a further understanding and awareness of what really goes on within public housing. Again, we're always asking you to be mindful of the need, the time, and if you have questions, when this video is put out, and I think Joanne said maybe by the end of the week, we will put Carol's information and you can direct questions to her, and you can always direct questions to myself at pchoi@pbchafl.org. As Realtors, we know firsthand what is happening in our communities. So we thank you for taking this time this morning. Again, questions, please direct them to Carol, myself, or Joanne. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.